Okinawa, June 1945. Rain fell for days. Big, heavy drops hit the tin roofs of the American prison camp. Inside the food tent, many captured Japanese nurses sat over thin soup when the loudspeaker turned on. A loud voice said, "All women, go to the medical tent to check if you're pregnant." Everyone went quiet, like a bomb went off. Chopsticks stopped moving. Someone giggled, thinking it was a mistake. Pregnant? Maybe they meant something like malaria. But the translator said it again in clear Japanese. Every woman looked at each other. No one knew what kind of war this was anymore. By evening, talk spread through the camp. The Americans want us pregnant. Some thought it was punishment. Others said it was to stop us from having babies. Most hoped it was just wrong. A nurse named Tanuka Misau, 27, put her hands together and whispered, "Maybe they'll use us for tests." Fear moved through the tent like electricity. The women knew stories about China's Unit 731, where people were used for experiments. Was this their time? When the American medical officer came, a tall man with a clipboard and a tired face, his voice wasn't mean. The translator said, "Pregnant women can't be sent to work camps." The words felt heavy. They want to keep us safe. No one believed it. The same army that burned Tokyo was now giving vitamins and baby care. It felt like a trick dressed as a doctor. But the papers were real. Women who signed the mother form got extra food and soft beds. By the end of the week, over 50 women agreed. The Americans even made a special area called mother rooms. They filled it with blankets, milk powder, and soap, things most nurses hadn't seen since before the war. But shame stayed. What kind of soldier stays alive by pretending to have an enemy's baby? Tanuka's hand shook as she signed her name in Japanese, ink spreading on thin paper. The translator smiled a little. "Congratulations," he said. "You're safe now." Safe? The word felt strange. Tanuka looked around the tent, faces pale, stomachs empty, hearts pounding. No one knew why this safety existed or what it would cost. But one thing was clear. This rule was just the start of something very odd. The next morning, Tanuka faced the clipboard again with a new question, waiting for her signature. The morning smelled of wet cloth and cleaning liquid. Tanuka Misau stood outside the medical tent. The paper from yesterday was still in her pocket, edges curling from the damp air. Inside, American doctors moved fast, metal trays clinking, boots squeaking on wet wood. When her name was called, she stepped forward, back straight, eyes down. The same doctor from yesterday, a man they called Captain Ri, pointed to a chair. "Do you understand the rule?" the translator asked quietly. Tanuka paused. "To be pregnant," she answered. Ri nodded, then showed a chart with English words. The translator said, "Pregnant women can't be sent away. They stay here, safe from work camps or being moved." For a moment, Tanuka couldn't breathe. It wasn't shame. It was a plan. A paper trick pretending to be biology. Someone high up realized if these women were pregnant, the Geneva rules made the Allies keep them in medical care. But the question burned. How? There were no men in the camp. No contact allowed. Guards never crossed the fences. "Then who will make this happen?" she asked softly. The translator frowned, looking for words. "It's just for show," he said. "A paper pregnancy." Tanuka looked at the form. In neat English it said, "Person, medical pass, pregnant, yes/no." One check mark could change her future. Around her, other nurses were already filling out forms. Some hands shook so much they ripped the paper. By evening, over 1,000 forms were collected. Reports later showed nearly 1,200 women were marked unfit to be moved, numbers that didn't make sense for real pregnancies. But in that strange part of taken over Japan, paperwork became a way to stay alive. Tanuka signed slowly, her heartbeat calming as ink touched paper. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like a prisoner. She felt guarded by a lie. When Ri let her go, she stepped into the wet evening, the paper folded in her hand. Around her, others whispered about what this meant. Some laughed nervously, others cried. But one question beat louder than the rain. If we're only pregnant on paper, who will carry this lie? Tomorrow, Tanuka would learn the camp held a secret just for them, one built on tricks. By the third week, the new mother area stood at the camp's far edge. 3 cloth tents sat in a muddy spot, with a white sign in English, Mother Section. No men were ever seen nearby. Guards at the entrance held no guns, just clipboards. For Tanuka Misau, the quiet felt heavier than bullets. Inside, the air smelled a bit of soap and cooked rice. American doctors moved with care, giving out vitamin pills and small bottles labeled cod liver oil. Women lined up barefoot, sleeves rolled up. The doctor, kept his voice kind, almost sorry. You'll get daily meals and checkups, the translator said. No work, no checks. That phrase spread through the camp like air and whispers. Some laughed for the first time in months. Others cried from relief. The same army that bombed their cities was now teaching them about baby food. By the end of June, their food doubled from about 1,000 to 2,100 calories a day. Reports later said it was on purpose. American leaders knew starving prisoners would make the world angry. Still, the women couldn't ignore the irony. We eat better as prisoners than we did as nurses in uniform, one said quietly. At night, Tanuka lay awake, hearing rain hit the tent roof. No one in the mother section had morning sickness or swollen feet. Yet doctors kept up the act, measuring waists, writing growth notes, giving out baby blankets made from parachute cloth. The Americans smiled nicely but said little. It was a play with papers. One evening, Tanuka helped another nurse, clean the floors. Whispered, "Maybe they really think we're pregnant." Tanuka looked around. Then why no men here? The question hung in the damp air, unanswered. Across the camp, another truck came. Boxes of powdered milk, canned peaches, diapers. Everything felt real except the pregnancies. Then one humid morning, Tanuka saw something that broke the lie. In the supply tent, a U.S. doctor quietly opened a crate of fake stomachs, soft bumps to tie under uniforms. For the first time, she understood. The Americans weren't making them pregnant. They were going to fake it. The crate opened with a soft creak. Inside, rows of pale cloth bumps lay folded like strange, lifeless things. Each was shaped to fit under a woman's uniform. Tanuka stared, unable to speak. A young U.S. doctor, cheeks red with embarrassment, mumbled through the translator, "You'll wear these to stay safe." By afternoon, the camp turned into a stage of lies. Behind tarps and quick walls, women were fitted with fake pregnancies. Straps creaked. The smell of sweat and cloth filled the air. "It's silly," whispered tying her belt. Tanuka forced a small laugh. Silly might be safer than dead. The Americans wrote everything down. Each woman's file got a stamp. Pregnancy month 3. Doctors noted weekly growth. It was paperwork dressed as kindness. Later records said over 600 fake pregnancies were logged in those months. An act soldiers jokingly called Project Paper Belly. Tanuka saw her reflection in a cracked mirror. Her uniform stretched slightly, stomach bulging just enough to look real. Felt like a lie sewn into cloth. But the guards treated her differently now. Less doubt, more space, even small smiles. The power of the lie worked fast. At mealtime, pregnant women got double food. Rice bowls were fuller, and a spoonful of canned fruit came with each tray. Hunger that had followed them since capture started to fade. For once, Tanuka felt the weight of food in her stomach match the fake weight on her belly. At night, quiet laughter returned. Women practiced holding invisible babies, walking slower, leaning on walls like they were tired from new life. It was practiced humanity. But something darker came in. One nurse whispered she saw an American doctor crying alone behind the medical tent. He said, "This is kindness," she murmured. "But kindness shouldn't look like this." Tanuka didn't answer. She just tied her straps tighter and looked out at the rain-soaked yard. Then one dawn, a sound broke the fragile rhythm. The sharp cry of a newborn came from the medical tent. It wasn't a drill. Someone in the camp was really pregnant. The act had just met reality. The baby's cry cut through the dawn like an alarm. For a moment, no one moved. Then the camp burst into whispers, footsteps, and questions in 3 languages. Tanuka dropped her spoon during breakfast and ran to the medical tent, her fake belly swaying under her uniform. Inside, the air was hot and smelled of cleaning liquid. A nurse she didn't know, a young woman from Nagasaki, lay on a cot, face wet with sweat, holding a bundle wrapped in a U.S. Army blanket. The baby's soft cries echoed off the cloth walls. For a moment, everyone forgot the war. The translator whispered, "It's real." One American doctor smiled, relief on his face. The news spread like fire. One of them had really given birth, no fake bump, no papers. That night, voices buzzed across the tents. Some said she fell for a guard. Others swore it was a soldier hidden before surrender. The wildest talk said the Americans planned it to make the lie stronger. Tanuka couldn't sleep. She thought of the woman in the medical tent holding a half-American baby while her homeland was in ruins. The conflict hurt her chest. How could something pure come from occupation? Records later showed at least 17 babies born across Okinawa prison zones by 1946. None were linked to force. Most were marked as agreed contact. The phrase carried a heavy silence. In the days after, guards acted differently. They walked slower past the mother section, voices softer, eyes avoiding the women's faces. The word life came back to the camp, but it didn't erase guilt. Tanuka visited the mother 3 days later. The woman smiled weakly. "They say I'll go to Naha," she whispered, "for care." Tanuka nodded, though she knew transfer often meant vanishing. That night, in her tent's dark, Tanuka prayed for a child she'd never see. Outside, someone hummed a lullaby. It sounded strange yet familiar. The next morning, Tanuka asked to help in the medical tent. She needed to know who this woman was and why she said she agreed. Tanuka entered the medical tent the next morning under a gray, humming sky. The air smelled of medicine and clean sheets. She found the new mother leaning on her cot, eyes half closed, a faint smile under her tired face. The baby was quiet now, sleeping, tiny fingers holding the edge of a U.S. Army blanket. "I'm Nurse Tanuka," she said softly. The woman blinked, then whispered, "I'm Yuki Sudo." Her voice was weak but steady. For a long time, neither spoke. The rain tapped lightly on the roof, each drop counting time between worlds. Finally, Tanuka asked the question everyone dodged. "Was it forced?" Sudo shook her head slowly. "No, I agreed." Her eyes moved to the sleeping baby. "He said there'll be no war in this child." The translator nearby paused before repeating it in English for the doctor, who only nodded, lips tight. Tanuka couldn't decide what shocked her more, the words or the calm in Sudo's voice. There was no shame, no fear, just a strange sureness. For her, this wasn't giving up. It was living. In the days that followed, Tanuka helped Sudo recover. She watched the Americans bring her milk, bandages, even small cans of baby powder. The same soldiers who burned her hometown now bowed awkwardly when entering the tent. Later records showed baby deaths under U.S. care in Pacific prison camps dropped below 3%, compared to Japan's wartime civilian rate of over 27%. The irony wasn't lost on Tanuka. The enemy kept their babies alive better than their own empire ever did. Sometimes at night, Sudo hummed to her child, a song from before the war. One evening, she looked at Tanuka and said, "Maybe kindness can be learned, even by enemies." Tanuka didn't reply. She watched the baby's tiny chest move up and down, the only peaceful rhythm left in the camp. Yet guilt ate at her. Each fake pregnancy around them felt heavier now, revealed by this one real life. The war outside had ended, but inside, something deeper was coming apart. A quiet understanding that maybe winning and losing weren't opposites anymore. When mail came from Tokyo a week later, Tanuka's name was on an envelope. The seal was black. The envelope was thin, creased, and stamped with the red mark of the Tokyo Censorship Bureau. Tanuka held it like it might break. Around her, the women waited quietly as a translator handed out mail, rare pieces of another life that survived the war. She stepped outside, away from whispers, into the drizzle. The smell of wet cloth mixed with something sharp, like rust and sea. Her hands shook as she opened the paper. The ink was blurry but readable. "Your brother Hiroshi died on Iwo Jima, March 1945. No ceremony, no body, just one line." Tanuka sank onto a crate, numb. Hiroshi was 17, still a student when he joined the army. She remembered him laughing, trying on their father's too big army cap. Now he was gone, burned into the black sand of a lost island. Inside the camp, someone played a gramophone. A scratchy swing song floated through the rain, oddly happy. Tanuka stared at her reflection in a puddle. American boots, American tent, American music, and felt a pain no words could explain. That evening at dinner, she stared at her tray. Steamed rice, canned peaches, a slice of white bread. She thought of her mother in Tokyo, rationing scraps, boiling weeds into soup. Reports later said by August 1945, Japan had lost over 2.1 million soldiers, and hunger haunted the home islands. "We're eating like winners," whispered Ko beside her. "But we lost everything." Tanuka nodded slowly. "Maybe they feed us to feel better than us." Still, she ate every grain. The peach's sweetness filled her mouth, but guilt made it bitter. The Americans had taken her country, her family, yet in this strange prison, they gave her more comfort than her own empire ever had. That night, she folded Hiroshi's letter carefully and slid it under her mattress. Outside, lightning flashed over the sea, lighting up the white tents like ghosts. When dawn came, Tanuka walked straight to the medical tent. "I want to volunteer," she told the doctor through the translator, "for the mother's unit." She didn't know it yet, but that choice would make her more than a survivor, something much more complex. By mid-August, the mother's unit had a schedule posted outside the medical tent, hand-drawn lists of classes, checks, and home recovery drills. The title made Tanuka pause, recovery, as if surviving was a sickness to fix. Each morning started with roll call. The women lined up, fake bellies strapped under uniforms, rain wetting their sleeves. American doctors, most as young as the prisoners, taught them how to clean bottles, measure baby formula, and sew diapers from parachute cloth. Felt like a play, but the care in those actions was real. Tanuka learned fast. Her hands, once used for battlefield wounds, now practiced buttoning tiny shirts and folding cloth into triangles. One sergeant even showed how to rock a cradle in America. "Mothers sing before sleep," he said through the translator, his voice breaking a little. Maybe he had a child back home. The strangeness didn't stop the progress. By September 1945, 312 women were signed up for these 3-month mother classes. Reports called them training for after the war. To the women living it, it was a lesson in pretending to live. During meal breaks, Tanuka sat with Sudo, who now helped with demonstrations. Her baby, tiny, alert, mixed blood, became a quiet bridge between worlds. American guards often paused at the sight of him, unsure whether to smile or salute. One afternoon, Tanuka saw her reflection in a pot of boiled water, face thinner, eyes darker, belly sticking out under khaki. She looked like a woman caught between lies and new life. For the first time, she didn't hate her image. "Maybe," Sudo said softly beside her, "we're learning to live after the war ends." Tanuka wanted to believe her, but as dusk fell, a jeep rolled through the mud to the camp's main gate. Inside sat a man with bars on his shoulders, an American major with a stiff, uneasy posture. The guards stood straighter. Whispers spread through the tents. Inspection. Tanuka's throat tightened. Every fake record, every paper pregnancy, every false belly, they were about to be checked. The jeep stopped in front of the mother section with a hiss of wet brakes. Major Collins stepped out, broad-shouldered, mid-40s, face worn by war and papers. His boots sank into the mud as he looked at the tents. Behind him, a soldier carried a stack of reports as thick as a book. Tanuka and the others stood in line, rain dripping from the tent edges. Collins's eyes stayed on the rows of pregnant nurses. He frowned, lips tight. "What is this?" he asked flatly. Captain Rhee stepped forward, trying to sound calm. "Medical pass rule, sir. Geneva rules." Collins's voice cut like a knife. Geneva didn't say make up pregnancies. Tanuka's heart pounded. The translator paused, picking safer words. "He means these are kind protections." Collins turned on him. "Protection or lies?" He slammed a file onto a table. Pages opened, charts, weight logs, blood pressure notes. All neat, all fake. Rain hit the canvas louder, matching the tension. The women stood still. Collins flipped through pages, his jaw tight. "This is wrong," he said quietly. Rhee didn't argue. "Sir, sending them back means work camps, maybe worse." This keeps them alive. Collins stared at him for a long time. The only sound was the distant cry of Pseudo's baby, a human truth neither side could fully ignore. After a minute, Collins sighed. "You're turning soldiers into actors," he muttered. "Does that stop wars?" But he didn't stop it. Not yet. Instead, he ordered a check. Every woman's file would be looked at. Those not qualified would be sent away. Tanuka's stomach twisted. The paper belly that once saved her was now a target. That night, Ree told them quietly, "Be ready. Tomorrow they'll count. Don't panic." Tanuka lay awake, hearing rain, hand on the fake curve under her uniform. For the first time, it felt like a trap instead of safety. The storm hit before dawn. Rain fell in hard, cold sheets as floodlights cut through the dark. "All people line up," a voice shouted in English, repeated in Japanese. Boots splashed through puddles, and the women gathered in front of the medical tent, shadows long across the mud. Major Collins stood under an umbrella, clipboard in hand. Behind him, soldiers held lanterns that cast a shaky glow. "We'll check medical passes," he said. His voice was flat, but Tanuka felt the weight. This wasn't a check. It was judgment. One by one, names were called. Women stepped forward, lifted their uniforms slightly, showed the fake bellies strapped beneath. Each was touched, measured, recorded. The doctors' faces showed nothing. Those who didn't pass, no file, no record, no growth, were pulled aside. No one said where they'd go. By sunrise, trucks waited by the gate, canvas covers flapping in the wind. The women chosen to leave climbed aboard, silent, holding blankets and tin cups. Someone whispered a prayer. Someone else sobbed. The engines drowned it all out. Later reports listed 147 women taken from the Okinawa camp that night. No records showed where they went. Some thought they were sent home. Others feared worse, work camps, maybe medical transfers. Tanuka's turn came near the end. Her hands shook as she fixed the straps under her uniform. The doctor pressed lightly on the fabric and nodded. "Month 5, he wrote on his clipboard. The lie held. She breathed out slowly, every muscle trembling. Around her, empty beds and silence replaced the laughter that once filled the mother section. When the last truck vanished into the rain, Collins gave a short nod and walked back to headquarters. Ree stayed behind, face pale. "It's over," he said quietly. "For now." Tanuka didn't answer. She looked at the fake curve under her uniform. Once her shield, now a mark for those who didn't pass. That night she couldn't sleep. Candlelight flickered across her hands as she opened blank forms from a desk drawer. If survival was written on paper, she'd learned to write it herself. The rain stopped, but the mud still smelled of iron and rot. Inside the dim medical tent, Tanuka sat bent over a table lit by one kerosene lamp. The flame shook with every breeze, casting her shadow over stacks of medical files. Around her, the camp slept, guards tired, patients quiet. She was alone with the paperwork of survival. Each folder had a name, a number, a fake pregnancy chart. Tanuka's hands moved fast but carefully, trained from years of battlefield care. She crossed out one name, wrote another, changed the month column. A woman sent away yesterday was now reassigned to a medical unit. Another who died of fever was relocated under a special pass. Paperwork was her disguise, lies her air. By dawn, she'd changed 68 medical records, each one so different it couldn't be traced. The Americans would think those women still lived, breathing somewhere behind the fences. Maybe Tanuka thought that was a kind of revival. Outside, the first light hit puddles between tents. She stepped out, tucking her fake papers into a cloth bag. Her uniform was still wet, the fake belly tight against her ribs. The camp smelled of coffee and fuel. Captain Ree came from a far tent, eyes tired but sharp. "You're up early," he said. She shrugged. "Couldn't sleep." He smiled faintly, but something in his gaze seemed to sense her quiet rebellion. Later that day, Collins ordered another check. Tanuka's heart raced as he read her changed files. His brow wrinkled, but the changes fit too well with official writing. When he closed the folder, he muttered, "You clerks are too good." That night, word spread that some women on the deportation list were found. Their papers were rediscovered, their status restored. Tanuka said nothing, but inside, something sparked between victory and fear. The next morning, as she sorted bandages, a soldier entered the tent. "Major Collins wants you," he said, not looking at her. Tanuka's stomach turned to stone. She followed him past rows of quiet tents, mud pulling at her boots. Ahead, a lantern glowed over a wooden door with stenciled letters. Interrogation room number 3. The room was small, made of wood and sandbags, smelling of wet paper and bitter coffee. A single bulb buzzed above, casting a sick light on the desk between them. Major Collins sat with sleeves rolled up, a stack of files in front of him. His voice was calm, too calm, like it hid anger underneath. Tanuka stood still, her uniform damp, her fake belly pressed awkwardly between her and the table, silly in this small space. "You changed these reports," Collins said, tapping a folder. "Dates, signatures, growth charts, everything's wrong." The translator hesitated, glancing at her. Tanuka's jaw tightened. "I only followed your rule," she said softly. Collins frowned. "My rule?" She met his eyes for the first time. "You told us to be pregnant, so I made it true." For a moment, the silence felt solid. Outside, thunder rolled far over the Pacific. Collins breathed out through his nose, looking at the forged papers. They were too perfect to call a mistake. "You're protecting them," he said quietly. Tanuka didn't answer, her pulse loud in her ears. She thought of the 147 women who vanished that night, the empty beds, the folded blankets. Maybe her lies saved a few from joining them. Maybe not. Collins leaned back, rubbing his temples. "You think saving them this way honors anyone?" She finally replied, voice steady. "I think not saving them dishonors everything." The translator's breath caught. He didn't need to translate, the meaning carried its own weight. For 3 days, Tanuka was kept in that room, questioned, watched, then left alone with her thoughts. The guards didn't yell or touch her. They just waited for her to break. But she didn't. She kept saying, "I followed the rule to be pregnant." Records later noted she was held 72 hours, then freed due to paperwork mix-up. No charges, no record kept. When she returned to the camp, Collins was gone. His jeep left before sunrise. In her tent, she found a single note on the table and signed, "Your paperwork works better than my command." The next week, she was moved to the maternity ward where the lies had started, and real life now cried in every corner. By early 1946, the camp was so different it was hard to recognize. The barbed wire stayed, but signs now read Rehabilitation Center, Civilian Medical Unit. Soldiers called it the rebirth camp. What once held fake pregnancies now housed real ones. Refugees, widows, survivors too broken to go home. Tanuka Misau moved through the ward like someone who had left her old self behind. The fake bellies were gone. In their place, real mothers labored and cried. The air smelled of medicine, sweat, and clean linen. American supplies still came, painkillers, bandages, milk powder, but this time no lies attached. She became head nurse under Captain Ree, who now looked older but oddly calm. "They trust you," he told her one morning. "You built this with paper. Now you're building it with hands." Under her care, over 200 babies were born in the first half of 1946. Each one was recorded carefully, real names, real dates, no fakes. The war was gone, but its shadows stayed in every cry and lullaby. Sometimes, Tanuka watched the mothers like she once watched her comrades on the battlefield, counting breaths, fearing silence. She realized care and survival were the same instinct, just spoken differently. One afternoon, she found an old crate of fake bellies behind the supply shed. The cloth was stiff with mold, the straps worn. She stood there, remembering the fear, the whispers, the act of kindness. Then she ordered them burned. The smoke rose white against the gray Okinawa sky, curling like incense for the women who never came back. That night, the ward was quiet except for the soft sounds of newborns. Sudo's child, now toddling, giggled as he tried to walk between carts. When he fell, Tanuka caught him and laughed, a sound she hadn't made since before the surrender. Captain Ree watched from the doorway. "Ever think you'd end up here?" he asked. Tanuka shook her head. "I thought I'd die pretending to give life. Now I live by helping it start." But before Ree could answer, a runner came from the gate, holding an envelope with unfamiliar handwriting. It was from Major Collins. The envelope was yellowed by sea air, its edges soft from travel. Tanuka turned it over in her hands like it was alive. The name on the front, Tanuka Misau, was in English, but the handwriting was clearly Major Collins's. No return address, no seal, just a faint thumb smudge where the ink blurred. She sat on the steps outside the medical tent, watching the sun set over the Pacific. Around her, the camp hummed with life, babies crying, pots clanging, waves crashing beyond the fence. The war had been over for almost a year, yet its echo lived in every sound. Captain Ree approached, wiping his hands on a towel. "You going to read it?" he asked. Tanuka shook her head. "Not today." He nodded, said nothing, and walked back to the ward. She ran her thumb over the flap. Part of her wanted to know, was it an apology, gratitude, a confession? Maybe Collins wanted to explain the madness, to name the line between kindness and trickery. Maybe he couldn't live with the memory of that night, the files, the lies, the women standing in rain pretending to be mothers. But opening it meant going back, and Tanuka had promised herself to move forward. She stood, walked to the tree behind the supply shed, the same tree where fake bellies once hung to dry after checks. The bark was scarred, the ground still dark zodark with ash from when she burned the last of them. She dug a small hole with her hands, placed the envelope inside, and covered it gently. "Let it stay closed," she whispered. "Some truths are better quiet." That night, the ocean wind carried the faint smell of salt and smoke. In the ward, a newborn cried, and Tanuka hurried inside, lifting the child to her shoulder. She felt the tiny heartbeat against her chest, steady, strong, alive. Outside, waves crashed on the shore, washing over the ghosts of everything faked, forced, or forgiven. History would forget her name. Records listed her as missing. But in that camp of paper lives, she had written one real thing. Kindness can look like madness until it saves.